Ray and Claire found their neighbors anxiously packing their bags. They looked like they were going on a trip. They were puzzled and went out to ask, but the neighbor didn't explain and just told them to run for their lives before they could find out what was going on. The family drove off in a panic. They followed them to the road and found that the rest of the town had left their homes, as if they knew something terrible was about to happen. Some even left their gas stoves running. This strange scene made them feel uneasy, so for their own safety, they took Zoe with them and joined the fleeing team. But as soon as they got on the road, they noticed a lot of cars coming back.
Where are those people headed back?
Although they felt very strange, but they could only continue to drive until they reached the exit of the town. They realized that the road ahead had been completely blocked by the military. A hovering helicopter kept shouting, "There's been an outbreak of an unexplained epidemic in the town. No one is allowed to leave the area. They must be quarantined at home until the outbreak is over." Everyone's just standing there confused about what's going on. They don't know why there's a sudden outbreak, and they don't know what to do next. Suddenly, a rock fell from the mountain and hit the car. The hood had a huge dent in it. They looked up in horror. Just when they wondering if an earthquake had occurred, two fighter jets appeared and flew straight into the town below. Residents crowded around to see what was going on. They couldn't understand why fighter jets were being sent to quarantine the epidemic. What they saw next was horrific. Watching their homes engulfed in flames, the people there were in disbelief. They can't believe that the military destroyed the town in order to destroy the virus. But before they could recover from the shock, the fighter jets turned around and came at them. Everyone scattered. In the chaos, Claire saw a water tower not far away. She figured it was an elementary school, and there was also a shelter, so they fled immediately. Just halfway up the hill, fighter planes bombed the place where they were. They didn't dare to stop for a moment. They ran all the way to the hatch of the shelter. But at the same time, the fighter planes seemed to have noticed them. Luckily, at the last moment when the bomb was dropped, they were able to enter the shelter without any danger. When it was quiet outside, they explored the area cautiously. Luckily, this place was originally built as a doomsday bunker for the war. It was well stocked with supplies. But now Zoe just wants to know how long they're going to stay in this shelter. Ray couldn't answer that question. All he can do is keep telling his daughter not to be afraid. They'll leave as soon as the crisis is over. The family settled down in the underground shelter. Because of the lack of sunlight, Zoe soon developed claustrophobia. Everything became terrifying in her eyes. Every night she had nightmares. Luckily, Ray was patient. He would play all kinds of fun games with Zoe. He would also tell her bedtime stories. As time went by, they hid in the bunker for almost a year. Every day Zoe would draw a line on the wall. Soon the whole wall was covered with lines. More than once, she wanted to go out and see the outside world, but her parents tried to stop her because they realized that the situation outside was not getting better. It was getting worse. There was a terrible presence trying to break into the bunker. They told Zoe that the virus had turned the people outside into monsters. They could be the only survivors in the world. They've reinforced the hatch and laid down 4 rules of doomsday survival that must never be broken.
Never be
I know
loud.
you know the rules.
2, never lose control. 3, never open the door. 4, never talk about the breathers.
But even so, Zoe's desire for freedom remained intact. In order to discourage her from going out, Carlisle had to take out a periscope to show Zoe what the outside world had become. There was nothing alive, as far as the eye could see. There was nothing but an apocalyptic landscape of ruins. After seeing the outside world with his own eyes, Zoe never talked about going outside again. But soon they encountered a new problem. The food in the bunker was very limited, only canned food that could be easily preserved, and they had consumed very little of it. Zoe had been eating canned soybeans for a few days. She wanted to try canned peaches, but when she opened it, the peaches were gone. From the holes in the cans, their bunker had been visited by rats. A bad feeling came over them. After careful examination, there was more than 1 can that had been eaten. All the cans of peaches they'd been so reluctant to eat had been eaten. In addition to the other cans, 12 cans were eaten by rats. That's 2 weeks worth of food. With so little food to go around, they're going to have to cut back, or they'll have to venture out for supplies. In the meantime, they have to find the rats as soon as possible. A few days later, the mother and daughter were playing a game. They looked in the mirror and saw something behind them. When they turned around, they saw the culprit mouse. Zoe called her father today. They're going to kill the thief and make up for it with a roast. Ray approached cautiously with his knife. He thought it was a sure thing, but the knife didn't hit. The escaping mouse knocked over the lamp on the table. The rat was about to escape. Ray's knife was stuck on the table. At the critical moment, it was the mother's show. She used her pincers to kill the mouse right in front of the hole, but then they turned around to find a bigger crisis. The overturned oil lamp, under the scorching heat, suddenly exploded and started a fire. Ray tried to put out the fire with water, but the rusty pressurized water heater got stuck. Claire used her clothes to prevent the fire from spreading, and Ray finally managed to get a bucket of water. Although it didn't put out the fire completely, but the fire was contained. The burning table was finally extinguished by their efforts. By now, the whole bunker was filled with smoke. Watching the smoke slowly drifting out from the skylight, they realized that there was a more difficult problem. The smoke would probably reveal their hiding place. Ray took his periscope and carefully looked outward. For the time being, he didn't find anything unusual, but Claire is very worried. Such a a huge smoke can be seen even from several kilometers away. But Ray is not worried. He thinks that even if the monster sees the smoke, it would be gone by the time they got there. They don't know where it's coming from, but Claire didn't think so. She realized that burning wood doesn't just produce smoke, it also produces a lot of dust, and if it was piled up in the skylight, it would be found. Ray looked outside again. Sure enough, he found a lot of dust piled up in the window. To be safe, they had to get rid of the dust. This is the first time they've opened the hatch. Zoe was left alone in the bunker, waiting for her parents to return. But as the seconds ticked by, there was no sign of them. She couldn't help but look out the periscope. It's a good thing they're safe and sound. But as the camera turned to the other side, there was a dark shadow approaching in the woods. In a hurry, she could only yell out. But outside, her parents are still cleaning up the dust. They couldn't hear Zoe's warning. She pushed through the hatch. Despite the danger, she came outside, but when she looked around, she didn't see her parents. While Zoe was looking around anxiously, Claire suddenly covered her mouth from behind. Then Ray came along. Zoe was about to tell what she saw. It turned out that the figures were just a couple of wild deer, but deer don't run away without a reason. What were they afraid of? Claire sensed danger. They ran back to the bunker. Just as Ray closed the hatch, he saw something and quickly locked the hatch with a chain. He thought he hadn't been seen, but there were footsteps overhead. After all, Zoe was still young. The tension made her cry. Ray comforted her and closed her eyes. Then he read her a story. Zoe finally calmed down, but the monster didn't leave. It seems to be looking for a way in. They didn't dare make a sound. They watched the creature's heavy steps toward the entrance. They were all on edge, but what they feared had happened. The creature is trying to open the hatch, but it doesn't last long. Perhaps it gave up after its attempts were unsuccessful. But as soon as they breathed a sigh of relief, they turned around and found another crisis. Zoe's toy accidentally got caught in the hose. As soon as the ring was released, the dolls will automatically sing, and then their position will immediately explode. However, if there is no accident, accidents do occur. Ray immediately grabbed the toy with a knife to take out the horn inside, then put it on the ground and crushed it. Watching her only companion being disemboweled, Zoe was devastated, but her parents had no time for her right now. They're worried about whether or not they've attracted the attention of the monster. They were staring at the top of their heads, thinking the crisis was over, but they didn't know that the hatch was being turned. The monster finally found them. They stared nervously at the hatch. The monster's power is very strong. The chains are too thick to stop it. Realizing that the monster would surely break through the door, Ray rushes to find something useful to use. Claire climbed up the ladder. She pulled on the chain, but she's too weak to do anything about it. As the hatch was slowly opened, a horrible face appears in front of them. At that moment of crisis, Ray finally arrived with a crowbar. He poked and prodded at the hatch. Claire found a way to close the hatch again. Ray immediately locks it down with a steel pipe. The crisis had been temporarily relieved, but the location of the bunker has been revealed, and it was no longer safe, because monsters always like to work in groups. Soon there will be another attack.
You're here.
With nowhere to run, they could only find a way to defend themselves, but this time, the hatch was breached in an instant. They looked up and saw a pair of horrible eyes staring at them. They hurriedly ran inside. The monsters entered the bunker and followed them. Claire grabbed the oil lamp and threw it to the ground, and pushed the shelves over to block their progress. But that won't last more than a few minutes. They had to get out of the bunker, and now the only way out is through the skylight. Ray used a stick to poke through the boards. He gets his wife and daughter out, but when it's his turn, something happens. The window was too small for him to get through. After countless attempts, Ray had an idea. He told Claire to hold on to his left hand. Then he twisted his whole body. With a bone-cracking sound, he broke his own arm, not caring about the pain. With Claire's help, he tried again. This time he was able to get out, but the monsters came in and grabbed his feet. Before he could leave his last words, Ray was dragged back again. By the time he got up from the ground, they were all over him. Then there was a fierce fight below. Claire and Zoe were devastated by the sight, but they had to continue to run for their lives. On the way, Zoe fell to the ground, and the doll she was holding fell to the ground. Just as she was about to pick it up, the monsters were already on their way. They passed through a forest and came to a place where abandoned cars were parked. Suddenly a helicopter appeared in the sky. The lights locked onto them, but they weren't happy about it. Instead they continued to run. But how can they outrun a helicopter? They were soon caught in a huge net that flew over them. The monster finally appeared. Surprisingly, they are only heavily armed human troops. At this moment, the plot was completely reversed. The real monsters are actually the three of them. Everyone in the town is infected with an unknown virus. They become monsters when they lose control of emotions. In order to prevent the virus from spreading, the military decided to bomb the town. When they entered the bunker to hide, Claire realized something was wrong with her body. She understood why they were being hunted, and now they've finally been caught. The soldier immediately took out a syringe and drew blood from their bodies. The color of the blood was black. Obviously, they were both infected. This result means death. Facing their agonizing pleas, the soldiers remained indifferent. At the command of the captain, they raised their weapons. In the face of desperation, they began to mutate. The next moment, the completely mutated father suddenly appeared. He killed a soldier in a flash. It turned out he turned into a monster when he fell from the bunker and killed the others. The soldiers rushed to shoot, but at close range, the monster was faster. But even the most powerful monster can't stop the rain of bullets. Watching Ray fall to the ground, the soldiers approached cautiously, but Claire and Zoe took the opportunity to escape. The soldiers began to search for them, unaware that danger was approaching. Roy's death caused Claire to lose control. She turned into a monster and attacked the soldiers. But after taking out a few soldiers, she was shot down. Her monstrous features were fading. Seeing that her mother was about to be killed, Zoe went crazy and turned into a little monster. She jumped on a soldier and beat him up, but Claire stopped her just in time. The soldier survived. Claire didn't want her to become a murderer at a young age, but Zoe was already delirious. Even her mother became a target. Luckily, with Claire's constant reassurance, she finally calmed down and became normal again. Unfortunately, Ray died of his wounds. Seeing the support planes appearing overhead, Claire could only take Zoe and hide in a sewer, but to their surprise, they met the neighbor's boy. He led them to another bunker. The neighbor's family wasn't the only ones inside. There were other infected people in the town. They had no choice but to go back inside, never knowing when they'd see the light of day again.